העולם. והפעם שם הבלט הוא לסילפיד. בלט שחולל סערה כשהוא עלה לראשונה ב-1872 וייצג את הדור החדש בבלט הקלאסי. דור זה הקים מהפכה בעולם הבלט כאשר דחה את המציאות ודגל באשליה. הלא הוא הדור הרומנטי. צפייה מנה לכם.
We're on our way to see an exciting new dance piece, a piece that has upset the dance establishment, and one which has been hailed as the voice of the new generation, a generation that expresses itself with its unkempt hair and wild clothing and subversive use of drugs. The piece is La Sylphide. It debuted in 1832 as one of the first cries of a sizable and disgruntled youth movement, not too far removed from the hippie culture of the 60s. And though it hardly seems subversive today, La Sylphide was like nothing in dance before it. La Sylphide introduced the dance world to the Romantics, a generation of young artists that revolutionized ballet with its distaste for reality and love of illusion. Until the emergence of La Sylphide, ballet was strictly an entertainment of the court. It was part of a full evening of music, song, poetry, and dance, staged at the behest of the monarch. The performers were amateurs drawn from court life, that is, until the reign of King Louis XIV, whose interest in ballet necessitated a new standard, hence the emergence of one of ballet's first heroes, choreographer and dance reformer J.G. Noverre. Encouraged by his king, Noverre separated ballet from the other disciplines and helped it to achieve artistic independence. Financial independence was another matter. With the French Revolution in 1789, the support system on which the dancers and artists of Western Europe had depended for so long disappeared, and so for the most part did ballet. Until a bold new generation with an interest in fantasy and the spirit world emerged from the grim reality and oppressiveness of the Industrial Revolution. La Sylphide was the first ballet to successfully express the Romantic philosophy. Evelyn, could you briefly explain the story of La Sylphide?
La Sylphide. Do I know the story of La Sylphide? I've danced it. So it's set in a manor house in the north of Scotland. And James, the hero, is asleep in his chair. And as the curtain goes up, we see him in his chair. We see the full baronial appointments of his manse. And we see right beside him the mischievous sylph, the La Sylphide.
James is just about getting married to Effie.
And at one point, he's so infatuated with the sylph, and she keeps saying, come with me, come with me. And she's this magical, beautiful creature. He falls in love with her. And even though he loves Effie, he just can't help himself. And in his engagement party, or whatever it is that he's having, the sylph appears to him, but he's the only one that can see her. The sylph becomes his ideas, his thoughts, his dreams, his desires, his denial of responsibility and reality.
Just before he gets married, the sylph once more appear and try and say, you know, I'm crying for you. You have to come with me. And he run away with the sylph to the forest. The second act, I'm cutting out completely Madge. Oh. I'm really not a good storyteller.
Madge the witch, she's weaving a spell over the sylph and over James. I guess she doesn't like James very much. She hands James a magic scarf. But what James doesn't realize is that if he puts this scarf around the sylph, she will lose her wings and she will die.
When the sylph is appearing, they have a little play interlude, and finally said, you know, I love you, and, you know, I will give to you something. You obey for me. I said, yes, I do anything. And wrap her on, and she dropped dead. Some way or other is like that, in very bad English.
Well, somewhere in all of that, you'll find the two major motifs of romantic ballet. The first is a hero on the brink of complacency who suddenly throws it all away in a search for true happiness, a search that always proves fruitless.
James is a very romantic, a very dreamer, poetic dreamer of life. James is someone that wants to have it all, in my opinion. He wants to have his home. He wants to have the coziness of that cottage. But he also likes to go out into the woods and dream of nature and dream of this lovely image of perfection, which is to him the sylph. The sylph represents to him the eternal love, the ideal love. And this is James. At the same time, he wants to still live in the cottage. But he makes a mistake, in my opinion. He follows that ideal dream, and he loses the reality of his home.
He is trapped in this house of order and, I wouldn't say obedience, but, you know, he's been brought up to marry this girl. Everything has been set for him his whole life. And he's a rebel.
And he escapes from this.
He's a rebel with a cause.
A rebel with a cause.
I think he genuinely loves Effie, with whom he's engaged. Maybe he cares for her. Maybe he doesn't love her, he cares for her. And I don't know if this sylph is as much his love as the solution to escape.
The second major motif in romantic ballet is the notion of a lyrical netherworld. This notion is always represented by a fanciful female creature, a woman who is half human, half bird. The spirit of a young girl condemned to dance forever. Or, in the case of La Sylphide, a winged sprite as difficult to hold as a dream.
you know, it's like a butterfly that someone squashes. I mean, it's just horrible, you know. She just wants to love. James, of course, goes through much more complex, difficult. She's not complex at all. She just wants to be with him, wants to be close to him, wants to show him the forest and the butterflies and the birds, and is just unhappy when she's not with him. I mean, it's very simple. You know, wish, you know, life were really that simple.
Translate it to today's terms. How many young men are there, or young women, who feel that they cannot cope with the day-to-day realities of their existence, who just say, I've had enough, and somehow try to escape? It's all about escape. This is what James was doing. He just could not face the responsibilities of everyday life. So I, as the sylph, who was the enticer, took that into account. And we all have a yearning to just chuck it. Get out of this. Leave it. Fly off. Be somewhere where there are no cares. And I would think of that need that I have, that we all have, just wanting to be children and wanting to throw off all the mantles of responsibility. So those were the ideas that would rush through my head. And then in her death, it was the realization, the physical realization with the scar, that none of us is allowed to do this. You just can't run away from life. And if you do, it kills you.
In creating the sylph, Filippo Taglioni and his daughter Marie, for whom the ballet was developed, revolutionized choreography. The sylph, a winged sprite, must appear to be lighter than air, but a ballerina isn't. Believe me, I know. So how do you take something which is bottom heavy like this and create the illusion of being light? Like this. Well, the Romantics came up with several ways. The first and most obvious was a series of stage tricks. Of greater consequence was the way that they conveyed this idea through the dancers' bodies. In fact, this had such impact with audiences and critics alike that in time, all of ballet would be based on the following concept: the idea that the dancer operates on a higher physical plane. In La Sylphide, dancers were asked to leap through the air. Demonstrate an unprecedented lightness. And most significantly, dance on point.
I think the point shoe is the element that makes the ballerina slightly inhuman, that makes the ballerina, it adds this weightlessness, this lightness, that you look at this and all of a sudden it's not a human being anymore, but it's a creation of God in a way.
Though point shoes went on to widespread acceptance, they remained, as any ballerina will tell you, a mixed blessing.
Point shoes are inhuman. They hurt. They can rip your toes to shreds. They take 20 years of technical striving in order to conquer, but they can be a tool like no other in dance and in art for creating something that is utterly unnatural and utterly beautiful.
You get more accustomed to it, but you never really get used to it, and it always is uncomfortable. I mean, I've learned lots of tricks to make it more comfortable, but no, the human body does not really readily adapt to, you know, putting those instruments of torture on your feet. But the line that is achieved with those shoes and the kind of look you can get and the kind of magic you can create, I think, you know, there's nothing that can take the place of that. It's very beautiful.
That's because, though the toes on those instruments of torture look like they offer a lot of support, they really don't. In fact, the toe of a point shoe is no more than satin, canvas, leather, and lacquer. So when a ballerina goes up on point, the emphasis is still very much on the joints of her feet. Where a normal foot in an elevated position looks like this, that same foot in a point shoe looks like this. You can see the two nails in her shoe. Notice how the whole foot changes and how much smaller this foot is because it's being compressed, and how the joints are all being compressed, and how her toes, the whole shape of her toes have changed because she has her whole weight now standing on her toes.
You know, you kind of feel like that fairy tale, The Princess and the Pea. The slightest change from what you're used to, you can feel. It throws off your center of gravity, your balance, and you feel it. And sometimes you try to explain it to the shoemaker, and they're going, these are exactly the same shoes. And you're going, no, you know, I can feel it. You know, I can't dance in these. And sometimes, and it's scary because you get shoes that you just can't.
Though Filippo Taglioni's version of La Sylphide, with its emphasis on the ballerina, continues to be performed the world over, there's another version of the ballet that is just as popular. It's the Danish version, choreographed 4 years later by August Bournonville.
Bournonville always dances when he's happy. He rarely, I've never seen it, does a solo or a pas de deux on the misery of the soul. Dance always comes out of the music and out of the soul being so overjoyed that it has to go into some kind of vigorous movement of you know, celebrating life.
In his native Denmark, Bournonville's name is synonymous with dance.
This is funny. It's some of those old Bournonville people who were really brought up, they're still alive in Denmark, you know, who were brought up with the Bournonville classes, the daily classes, in the 30s and 40s. You know, you can wake them up at night and ask, what is this step? And they go, oh, I don't know. But you put on the music, and they'll go, like, it's like this and this and this and this and this. And this. You know, and that's I don't know. It's like a, what do you call them? A
organ grinding.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's just there, you know, from years back.
To translate, organ grinding means muscle memory. Muscle memory is when the body automatically clicks in when it hears a piece of music. For example, Kimberly here may not be able to verbally recount to me how a certain piece of choreography she performed long ago goes, but if I put on the music, her body will instantly launch into it. I'll hum a piece of music at random and see if it works. It'll be fun, don't worry.
Okay.
It works. But when it comes to Bournonville, Most of the organ grinders, as Nikolai Ube calls them, are male. That's because where all other choreographers of romantic ballet emphasize the woman at the expense of the man, Bournonville ballets challenged the male dancers as strongly as they challenged the female.
We also have to remember that Bournonville himself was an extraordinary male dancer. So as a choreographer, he was going to highlight the male dancer as best as he could, very much like Vestris. He wanted very much that the male dancer would have an equal place as a ballerina. And if we look at La Sylphide, we see that the ballet gives as much opportunity technically and artistically for the male dancer as for the ballerina.
While the rest of the world had the man carrying and carrying and carrying, he had the man dancing.
Under Bournonville, men didn't simply emerge from the shadow of the ballerina, they leapt from it.
Very much. The Bournonville style and the school, it's a very peculiar one because it brings out a specific attack that very few other schools have. The Bournonville has an attack of what we consider ballon. The ballon is to bounce. So every jump links with the other, but there's a bounce from one jump to the other. And that's what's so exciting about the Danish school, and that's also what's so very interesting and peculiar.
Ballon appears to be a simple succession of bounces that look like this, with the arms and hands restricted and all of the emphasis on the legs and feet. But there's a lot more to it than that. This is not Bournonville's choreography, but it's an excellent example of ballon. Now, there are two things going on here. When we roll the tape, notice how relaxed the dancer's arms, neck, head, and face are. All the effort is in his legs and feet. Let's roll the tape. Now, he's doing a step here called entre-chassis. Notice how all the effort is in his legs and feet, and his upper body is completely relaxed. Now, the next set of steps is more difficult because they don't repeat. Here, the dancer is required to jump from 2 feet and land on 1. Now here, he'll leap from his left and land on his right. Then he'll leap from his right and land on his left. Finally, he will step with his right, leap from his left, and land on both feet. So though this kind of bouncing or ballon seems free, joyous, and unrestricted, it's really anything but, except, of course, in the hands or feet of a great dancer.
I found it an amazingly demanding. I think of all of them, you have to have your energy up so high, so fast from the get-go, because it's such explosive. When the dancing happens, it's so explosive.
Under Filippo Taglioni, La Sylphide changed the image of the ballerina forever. Under Bournonville, it changed the role of the male dancer. But La Sylphide's greatest claim is that it's the calling card of the Romantics, that influential generation that forever changed the face of dance with the creation of such bold and beautiful illusions.